I'm super excited about not just today's episode, but this series. This is going to be a five-part series, and I've never done this before. In that, it's not just a conversation. It's going to be more like a course where, at the end of each episode, we're going to give you actionable steps. And there's a flow to this, so it's not just random conversations. They can all be single servings, but together it's going to feel like a fleshed out course. And so the audio on my podcast, if you want to see us, the video in my Single on Purpose app. So let's introduce my guest slash partner on this, Lair Torrent. I love threading intros throughout the conversation, but I would love for you to give us broad strokes, who you are.
On Oh man, so I am a father of two boys,
Hmm.
15 and 12, and I am often known as Ashley's husband. Um, my wife Ashley is also a therapist, a practitioner. We live now in Charleston, South Carolina. I've been a therapist for a number of years. I went to a training program that I liken to having gone to Hogwarts, called the Helix Training Program in New York City, and then I went on for my licensure. Prior to that, I was an actor, and that taught me a lot. Prior to
Mm,
that, I was a hockey player. That taught me a lot. But now I'm a practicing therapist, author, and I've been doing a lot of speaking
yeah.
on our relationship to ourselves
Hmm.
and by and large, our relationship to our feelings. And that's catching a lot of traction. So that's I guess more of what I do than who I am. But here we are.
We're gonna get to who you are as we peel layers. Lair is also, and I'm breaking confidentiality myself. Lair is also currently my therapist, and I really connect with you as far as we're roughly the same age. The way that you speak, uh, I just think you're a really powerful catalyst, and so thank you for doing this with me.
Of course.
I know that the listeners are going to get a lot out of this, just through us being in the same room. Can I ask you? Can I start with what made you want to become a therapist? What was the inciting incident for that?
So I would say it tracks back to being about 19 years old.
Mm,
And I was laying there on the couch at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, just sort of staring at the television. We only had a few channels back then. Um, and I was cycling through and I saw, I saw Tony Robbins, an infomercial for Tony
oh
Robbins.
wow!
And I was
Wait a minute.
like,
When you were 19, did he start
yeah,
that long ago? Holy
hey, I'm
shit!
not that old,
No, no.
dude.
I'm listen. You're I'm as old as you are, but I'm just thinking. Uh, nine Tony Robbins. I
Well, he
thought.
had a long run. He had a
Yeah, he had
long
very
run.
long run. Yeah,
Yeah,
he was kind of
this
the
is
first
back when
coach, right?
he was like talking to Fran Tarkenton on some pool deck somewhere, as I recall.
Yeah.
And I just remember like I was listening to the guy and I was like, wow, there is more out there. And it sort of weirdly spiked this internal need to understand myself more.
Mm,
And I remember I was with this girl and she was beautiful in all the ways and smart and funny. And I was starting to discuss these ideas with her. I was trying to. And I remember her saying to me, I mean, does it have to be that complicated?
mhm,
I mean,
right,
and
right.
I'm like, how is it not?
Yeah.
And she's like, can't it just be simple? And I knew right then and there that I was going to need to dive the depths. This relationship was probably not for me. And that I was going to be a someone who was constantly seeking to know more about myself and about the
Mm,
human experience. And so that's when it really all started. Um, and I was just getting inklings of it. You know, it's like someone once said to me, if you want to know what to do with your life, look no further than your bookshelf.
mhm.
And when I looked, I was an actor at the time, and there was about 4 books on acting, and there was about 50 books on self-help, how the brain works, therapy.
Wow.
And when I looked, I was like, come on, man, it's the writing's on the wall. You need to go back
Yeah.
to school. Yeah.
You know what's interesting is for you to be that curious starting at 19. That's pretty amazing, man. At 19, I was warming a high school bench and stealing car stereos. I, unlike you, did not play, although I was on the team. But
Mhm.
that's amazing at 19 that you were very curious about this whole thing. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
awesome, I love it. So this series is going to be called The Unfinished Man, but it's not really just about men. It's a five-part series about men, relationships. We're going to talk about love, parenting.
Mm,
It's kind of like just the whole human experience, but because we are men, we're going to kind of go in through that door. But it's also, I think, not just to help navigate men and their roles in relationships, fatherhood, work, and their own personal growth, but also to offer women a deeper understanding of the male
mhm,
experience in today's world, which I think is really important. And that's another reason why I wanted to do this with you. I just feel like you present yourself in such an honest way.
mm,
I think about women listening or watching, and what I would love for them to take away. And it's not so much information or wisdom or techniques and tools, it's how we show up. And so,
that's right. That's
yeah.
right.
So,
Mhm,
episode one today. Today's just episode one, and we're going to talk about. We're going straight into the deep end, no shallow
yeah.
end of the pool.
Nope.
Big topic: what we've learned about relationships, and the
Mm,
theme is the foundation of healthy relationships and the evolving role of men in them.
mhm.
Woo! I don't even know where to start. What we've learned about relationships.
Well, what have you learned about relationships? You know, you've worked professionally. You've obviously have a relationship uh, currently,
Yeah, yeah.
and I know that you've been in a few of them. So,
I'm
what have you
still
learned?
learning about relationships,
Of course.
partly with you, as
Mhm.
we do sessions. Um, Keanu Reeves once said that there's a difference between falling in love and having a relationship. Those are two
Mm,
very different things,
mm,
and I definitely now believe that more than ever. In that, young love for me was the lightning in the bottle, dopamine.
yeah.
Losing yourself in someone else. I've always been a hopeless romantic. I love love.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
I also naturally when I invested in a relationship, nothing else mattered. It was just me and this person, and
Yeah.
it's us against the world.
Yeah.
But
We
now,
share that.
now at 51, I'm very different.
Mm,
Um, at 51, I believe that uh, the love that we build is greater than its parts. I also believe that the miracle of love is um, by giving yourself corrective love experiences that the love can actually start to heal people. And this
mm,
is kind of what I'm fascinated about these days is the power of love and not just something that feels good that you want, but it being medicine,
mhm,
for your growth is that's huge. So those are some of my love lessons, broad strokes.
mhm. I would mirror mostly all of that. I've been an incurable romantic most of my life, and you know, uh, I would fall in love and fall in love and fall in love and wonder why it didn't seem to be sustainable. And then when I finally met my wife, um, I think what I've come to understand is that there's a couple of things happening here. One is that your love is sustainable if you can continue to fall in love with the evolution of the person, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
Ashley's not the same woman I met, thankfully, 23 years ago.
Right.
She was amazing then, and she's
Right.
extraordinary now, but she's extraordinary for a lot of different reasons than she was back then.
Yeah.
And I hope the same for me. And so I think the thing that we've learned over time is to stay present enough with one another to watch the evolution, to see one another evolve, and to continue to fall in love with that. It's hard for me not to fall in love with someone who's challenging themselves to do what you're talking about, to heal,
Mm-hmm.
and to sew up their wounds. I think part of what we're here to do is to be present and to help our partners sew up their wounds. And so for me, that offers an extraordinary depth and vulnerability that I don't think we're talking enough about, and I'm hoping that we're going to cover a lot in this series.
Yeah, what you said, I really want to take a highlight or two, and it's that falling in love with the evolution of someone. Uh,
Mhm,
n- I think one of the trenches we fall into is when people say you're not the person I met,
mm,
it's a negative thing. Is like
mhm, mhm,
false
mhm,
advertising or
mhm,
this is not what I signed up for. And the thing is, well, if I was the person you met 7 years ago, that means that no one's growing, and we are kind of
mhm,
living in a time capsule.
mhm,
Um, so to actually grow with the person, to
mhm,
fall in love with one's evolution, that means
mhm,
that then falling in love isn't a constant. That means that you are falling in love as a journey that
That's right.
it's always happening, the discovery of someone new.
Yeah. Yeah, and when I watch her unfold and I
Mm,
watch her go through hard shit, I don't look at it as a pain in the ass. And very
yeah,
often I have to help my clients and sort of dissuade them from like as they watch their partner struggle with things that I always say love is actually inconvenient. Love is a pain in the ass often.
sure.
It will require and ask more of you today than it did yesterday.
Mm,
And if you're really showing up for someone and you really are present for this unfolding, you see them doing their work. I don't know, for me, like, I don't know how you can't fall in love with that. I know that that's the thing that I've continued to love about her, is that she's constantly finding her growing edge, and she's also supporting me in finding my growing edge, because
right.
thank God I am not the man today that she met 23
Yeah.
years ago. That's not the guy she would want to be married to right now with 2 kids. I'm telling you that.
It reminds me also of that saying that if you're not growing together, you're growing apart.
There
It
you go.
seems like it requires two pistons pumping for the engine to move forward, right? And so if one person is not growing or interested in any self reflection, uh, then it just, the relationship dynamic doesn't work.
Yeah, and I alluded to that even in that young relationship I was speaking about with that woman many, many years ago. Is I recognized then and there that she was not interested in shift. She wasn't
Hmm.
necessarily interested in evolving.
Right.
Change was really, really scary, and I think change is scary for people in the micro and in the macro. Um,
Well, but to be fair, you were very early. So at 19, she's like, "All right, dude, come back to me in 30 years. I want to go have fun. I want to go do some drugs and shit. Don't tell
well,
me to evolve at 19."
I was like, and it was also like, hey, let's move to New York City together and get crazy, and she was
Yeah.
like, no, I think I'm gonna move in on my parents' street kind of thing, and you
Yeah.
can come. Actually, they asked me if I would come and take over her uncle's bakery.
Mm.
Um, and so I projected that into the future of me waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go bake the donuts.
Wasn't worth the free pastries.
No, no,
The life that
no,
you wanted.
no, no. Yeah.
Um, the evolution of relationships, understanding how relationships have changed over the years, but
Mhm.
also what it means for the modern man. What do you think about that? Or the modern men in general? I feel like
S-
for men, so much has changed with
Oh,
culture, times. I mean, if I look
mhm.
at just my dad and the world that he lived in, you know, side by side to the world that we live in, I mean, it's a different world.
I mean, it is. And, I still have, in recent years, I have had, speaking of the evolution of relationships, I have had clients who have wrestled with arranged marriages.
Mm,
We are not that far away, oddly enough, from that very, very old school version of relationships, which was really a land deal
right,
between two dads. I've got
right,
this boy and a couple of cows. You've got that girl and some
right,
extra
right.
acres over there. Let's put this thing together. Let's make it stronger.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think what ended up happening is our popular media has sold us this bill of goods about, and I call it the romantic era of
Mm,
relationships, right?
mhm.
Where we're buying into this idea of the rom-com moment
Yeah.
and the
The
romantic
one.
piece that won all
Yeah.
all of that. And
Happily ever
and so
after.
yeah, the movies, the poems, the songs all sort of sell that.
Mhm.
And I think that we perhaps are transitioning out of the romantic era. I'm hearing whispers of it, and I'm trying to do my part to help us transition out of that. Not that we're throwing romance out the window. I
Mhm.
just don't necessarily think that romance is the end all be all. That shouldn't be the target. I
Right.
think we're in an era of learning from one another, of helping each other level up as
Mhm.
being mirrors for one another. Like, I'm a mirror for Ashley, she's a mirror for me. And
Yeah.
in mirroring for each other, those pieces that you need, I think you might need to heal within yourself, that shit you might need to work on. We're helping each other sew up each other. We're helping each other sew up those wounds.
Yeah.
And so this piece, I think, um, is really interesting, right? Because we start growing together, we start evolving together, and then the hope for byproduct of that is connection, romance,
Mhm.
going to depth, and the big piece. And I think this is where men are really being called out on the carpet, is vulnerability,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
The,
Definitely more. I mean, that word has kind of become commercialized and definitely more open to it now than my dad's generation. But let me
Mhm.
ask you something. In growing up, Um, and I know you have your parents are young. Um, what
Mhm.
was your relationship like with dad? Was dad in the picture? What was modeled for you?
I grew up in the '80s, as you did, and it
Yeah.
was, it was man's man, not a lot of feeling, a lot of drinking.
Hmm.
There weren't a lot of hugs being doled out for dad. As I liked, I meet young man after young man after young man now who knew that dad loved them because mom told you so. That was my experience.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Young man after young man after young man knew that dad loved you because you ran into someone from work who said, your old man never stops talking about you.
Mm,
And it all came. I was standing at a urinal in a bar in my hometown. I had gone back there for whatever reason, and this guy ponies up to me and he goes, "You're Lair Torrent." He goes, "I know your dad never stops talking about you." And I was like,
mm.
"Fucking news to me."
Right.
Had no idea.
Right.
And so there wasn't a lot of like connection to emotionality. There wasn't a lot of hugs going around. Um, there was a lot of like, pick yourself up by your bootstraps
Yep.
and dust yourself off. And look, there's something to that. I think there's something to being resilient that way. But I think the piece that was missed is being able to operate outside of that very, very narrow window of emotionality that I think is afforded to men.
Who modeled what a man looks like for you when you were growing up, or was it Clint Eastwood and I don't know who was big in the '80s? Was it the
You
movies?
know, I don't man who modeled men for me. I like to say more by and large, I was raised by a house full of really strong women.
Mm,
My stepfather came along fairly late in life. And so I saw a lot of what not to do,
right.
you know, and I was sort of my mother's emotional surrogate
Hmm.
as, oldest sons. I was the only son, but what oldest sons can often be when that relationship isn't going well. I'm not saying that's the
Right.
healthiest thing in the
Right.
world, but
Right.
I think I learned how to be in relationship to women and their feelings by relating to my mother and being
Mm,
that emotional surrogate that he would never really listen. That's why they ended
right.
up getting a divorce.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And so it
Um,
was weird for me because I was in hockey locker rooms all of my life, and I would listen to the rhetoric and the banter going back and forth, and I was wired different because I was raised by those women, and
yeah.
so I would
But
be
almost, but that's kind of rare and almost a gift that you had. I think.
well, a gift and a curse because I also did not relate very well to other men. And
Right.
so they were
Right.
looking at me like, "There's something wrong with that guy. He just smells weird,"
Yeah.
And so I didn't I mean, I had a number of male friends and all of that, but it was just hard for me to really relate. I think I faked it a lot.
Do you not trust men? Do you struggle with trusting men based on the story or no?
Um, I think if I'm honest, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I felt from you when I first met you was I'm gonna feel this crazy Korean out. He's right here in the same room. I mean, I'm gonna be kind and everything, but
Yeah.
let me just watch him for a little bit. Let me observe. And I feel like you're very intuitive, obviously,
Mhm,
working with people.
mhm.
But even when you say you're an actor, I mean, a lot of acting is taking in someone else, their energy. And so I didn't feel judged. That's not what I mean. But I
Yeah.
just feel like you're someone when a man enters the room, probably more so than women. Um, Let me see what this person's about. Let me feel him out. I'm not gonna swing first.
No,
Let me
no,
see what he
no.
does, and then kind of let me get some information. It seems like that's the energy I felt.
Well, this is probably maybe too derivative of what we're talking about, but I think anyone who's particularly empathic, you can sense and feel what people are feeling in the room. And in
Mm,
the therapy session, that's great. People have anteed up for that. That's what they want.
right,
But
right.
out in life, when you start seeing people that way, and you're kind of what you picked up on is me kind of going, all right, what's going on over there? Um, People don't like that necessarily. They're kind of like, stop looking at my skirt, so to speak, you know.
Right,
And
right.
so I
A
do
little
pull
bit,
back. I
yeah,
do kind of like wait and just see what are we gonna get
yeah,
and how is this gonna go? Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, um, man, I grew up again in the '80s. Yes, hose water, latchkey kid, parents gone, and
Mhm,
Uh, dude, my parents never kissed, never.
mhm,
My dad would joke around and like kind of grab her. My mom would hit his arm away. They slept in separate rooms.
Mm.
I mean, I really think they only made love twice to make me my brother and I. So my definitions of romance, love, sex was always movies. If I could get my hands on a Playboy or
Yep.
any kind of nudie magazine, which required a
Mhm.
lot of effort,
Mhm.
and and then the locker room,
Mhm.
other boys, and
Yep.
kind of going on. And so I had a very warped definition. Also, my dad was he was an alcoholic. He wasn't angry or disruptive, but he was kind of emotionally reckless, and I just had no blueprint to trace.
Mm.
Just a lost kid in the '80s, confused and just learning by life, just learning
Sure.
by life. You know,
Mhm. And so what did you take away from that? Like, did that was that confusing as you sort of set out on your own? Did you have
it
to
was
kind of retool?
confusing. Yeah, it was confusing, and even now, I start thinking about motherhood wounds, fatherhood wounds, things that I never thought I had any kind of traumatic or dysfunctional upbringing because my parents never hit me or because my
Mhm.
parents, called me a piece of shit.
Mhm.
But I didn't have any emotional milk. My parents were always working, so
Mhm.
the attachment piece. I mean, now I'm realizing there were huge holes, and now I see this little 10-year-old Korean kid with a boy haircut, very
Mhm.
alone and trying to
Mhm.
fit in
Mhm.
America, and chasing after girls and all this. And so, so now I see things through a different lens, and I do see a lot of wounds.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
And is does any of your personal work revolve around dealing with that kid?
Yeah, I think that's kind of some of the stuff I'm doing now is
Mhm.
going back. Uh, they talk about reparenting. They talk
Mhm.
about
Mhm. Befriending
giving
the self.
yourself the things that your parents never could. So
Yep.
a lot of that kind of work.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's still kind of new to me, and I've been in therapy on and off for, of course, years. But um, it's amazing how much our childhood affects us.
Extraordinary so, but I wonder, like, so I've that the idea that we are inexplicably drawn into the arms of a romantic partner who will, by their very nature, recapitulate our childhood wounds, right?
Hmm.
Harville
Hmm.
Hendricks. Um, do you see anything in your current relationships or the relationships from your past where you've had this recapitulation where you were unaware of it and then became very aware of it?
Yes, and by the way, that concept that we get into relationships where then they activate these wounds, and the point of that is to put the black light on there so we could then investigate and heal. um, that although very difficult, is actually a very beautiful process.
Mhm.
I don't know any other species, or like animals or maybe aliens. I don't know what other creature has that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And I don't think
I,
we see it
I
as a gift. I think we see it
I
as
don't
like,
think many people see it as a gift, John. I
no,
don't.
no. No, because it's hard and most people run from it, including myself.
Well,
But,
that's the thing, right? Like, as Sue Johnson said in her book, Hold Me Tight, she said the therapists and the clients that they serve are typically only willing to go to the waterline on what it is that
mm,
we're actually dealing with. And so for me, I was like, well, what's below that waterline?
yeah.
And so what I've come to understand is, like, in our relationships, there's the things we're fighting about on the surface. And then below that waterline that she talked about, there's the things we're fighting for. And the thing that you're fighting for in part is that little boy.
Yes. So, feeling desired, wanted, chosen, seen,
Am I loved? Am I safe? Am I enough? And do I matter? Right. I was like,
yeah.
and Carl Rogers, he turned therapy on its head early on and said, hey, he said, young Freud, great. But there's this thing called unconditional positive regard.
Mhm.
And when I first read that, I was like, that sounds awesome. What the fuck is that? And, I need to know what that means. And so for me, and when I was digging
Person-centered
around,
therapy. Is that you're talking about person-centered, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And that idea that, like, he said that for all you therapists out there, every client who comes through your door is looking for one thing, and that is unconditional positive regard, that thing that they did not
Mm,
get, to your point.
right,
And
right.
so I wanted to break that down because I was like, we're too complicated. It's got to be like that little boy in you.
Mhm.
He was looking to know a couple, like, it sounds like he felt fairly safe because you had three hots and a cot and parents who, had a roof over your head and all of that. But,
Yeah.
were you loved? Were you enough? Did you matter in the world? Right. That's the place I'm I'm looking in my own life and in the relationships I work with couples is like, what you're fighting about is I mean, look, the kids, the money, all that shit's important. Don't get me wrong, but what's under the surface, what you're fighting for in those
Mhm.
fights, that's
Mhm.
the fucking interesting shit. That's
Right.
the marrow
Right.
that we're looking
So
at.
so
Yeah.
what, let me ask you this, because I got Levi's and a skateboard, right? So if I didn't get a lot of validation, love, what I call emotional milk, how do you
Yeah.
think that manifests? And I guess you don't know the answer because it depends on the
It's you.
individual. But how does it
Yeah.
generally manifest when you become adults?
Well, so, as I recall, you were an actor once too, right?
No, not an actor, screenwriter.
Screenwriter. Okay. So
Yeah.
you're, look, so for instance, for me, like
Hmm.
I sold my hockey equipment, moved to New York City, never having had an acting class in my life. Going to be
Hmm.
an actor, right? And all I wanted to do was see my big face up on that screen because then I would know I'd be able to prove to my old man that I was somebody, that I was enough,
Mm,
right?
you're right.
So you can find it in the tea leaves are usually right there in front of you.
Yeah.
They were for me, right?
Yeah.
I didn't, and look, that can manifest itself in you didn't feel like you mattered to anybody. You didn't feel like you were loved. For me, and I think men in particular, we are sort of um, left with this "am I enough" thing. I think across the board in society,
Hmm.
we are never really enough. The house is never big enough. The pile of money is never big enough. You're
Right.
never successful enough. It's great to run a capitalistic society, um, but we're never enough. And that was what it
Hmm.
was for me. And I just felt like, holy shit, if I could just, get that pilot. And then when I did,
Yeah.
called the old man up and said, "Hey, book this pilot. What'd you think of it?" And he was like, "Yeah." He did, literally did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, "So I'm not gonna get I knew I had to come back inside, and I had to befriend the self. I had to do that healing of that little boy inside of me that never felt like he was enough, that never
Mm.
felt like he mattered, and
Hey, this is a
we're all
great
fighting for that.
yes, we're all fighting for that. We all have our version of what you're talking about as far
Yep,
as you going to
yep,
New York and
mhm,
wanting to be on the big screen and then showing your dad the pilot that you booked and not getting
mhm,
the,
mhm,
um it's like running home after you get the B plus on the report card and parents like,
mhm.
whatever, I'm busy.
Yeah,
Um
but real quick,
we
how
all
that
definitely have our version of that. Yeah.
yeah, but I think how that manifests in a relationship is at large, let's say you're in a fight and a back and forth about any one thing, the thing that you're fighting about on the surface. When I've gotten into a back and forth with Ashley, my most successful moments in those tough times with her is to kind of see the very protective aspect of self that's shown up in this back and forth, in this fight, if you will,
Hmm.
to then kind of go like this and look behind her and sort of imagine that there's a little girl back there that just needs to know that she's safe.
Right, right.
And when I could see that,
Hmm.
what we're fighting about, we'll get there. But when I make her feel safe, holy shit.
Yeah. A lot of our fighting is a reaction, not a response. And I feel like if you can see not only the little child or the 10-year-old or that the person that is reacting from being hurt or whatever right now, but also if you can see the spirit of who they are truly, um, it definitely puts the shield
Mm,
down. At least for
mhm,
me.
mhm.
Um,
You
and
mean
I
like
think
their essence,
their
their
essence, their
yeah,
spirit,
yep.
I talk a lot about my most solid self before just started to exchange truth for membership. When I was hitting flow states and didn't care about people, and I just was authentically me, was
Mm,
around 10. And it was,
mm,
it was me doing windmills on cardboard. It was me getting obsessed with building blocks, Legos, and
mhm,
the world felt big. It was me on a little Honda Spree 50cc scooter, just ripping up and down the street. I was the
yeah.
first kid to pop a wheelie and hold the wheelie around the entire block. I was the
So
only kid to
back
ever do
then,
that.
that was
What's that?
that was something. That was something.
Yeah, but that tells me how much practice, how much obsession, how
Mhm,
much I had to be in self and wanting to do this for me to even pull that off.
mhm,
And there's a spirit in that. And after my divorce, I realized I completely disconnected with that kid, and so a lot
Mhm.
of what I did after that was to connect to the kid that I used to be. And this is why I say self betterment is sometimes more about a reunion than anything else. And that's
That's
why
beautiful. That's beautiful.
I bought
I
a
love that.
Harley and I started the blogging or whatever, right? And so, yeah, to see that person, that kid, I think as we become adults, we can become reactive and we can become monsters and we can
Yeah.
become, you know,
Mhm.
it's
Yeah,
it's
we
hard to see our souls as we grow.
well, right, because that inner constellation of self can hide that. Well, I say this, the wise self is very zen. And the wise self says, you can have that experience. You can be the monster. You can be the wounded child. You can be the inner critic. It doesn't, you can be the manager of everyone's feelings. We're going to get something. That's all grist for the mill. We're going to get it. And so what you did so beautifully, and I think what I try to do is to recognize that intrinsic goodness, that soul peace, and sort of move those other characters aside and go, okay, this is who I intrinsically am. This is that aspect of soul that's here. And it's at that point that like that part's happy to come forward, but it will let you have whatever experience you're deciding to have in the moment.
Mm,
Yeah. Mhm.
mm.
Yeah, because you're
Yeah,
going to get
it's
something from it.
yeah, it's interesting. I feel like in relationship, if that container promotes uh each individual to connect to that part of they used to be or kind of, their solid self.
Mm.
Um,
I love how you connected to who you used to be. Like when you're that's really, that's something I hadn't thought of. I love that.
as opposed to who you used to be as in a bad way.
No, 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 not who you used to be in a bad way. I think, and I've sort of, you know, characterize out of central casting this wise self inside of me that's probably got a Jedi robe on or two.
Mm, mhm.
And,
Yoda.
I didn't connect it to the wheelie riding kid. I think probably because my childhood was so traumatic. I haven't really ever looked at it in the way that you're looking at it. Like this is the freest version of yourself. And it's a
Mhm.
really beautiful thing to think about it that way and to reclaim those parts, not as the wounded aspects of myself, but as the parts of me that were really, really authentic. That's something I'm going
Yeah.
to chew on.
Yeah, and I've noticed that, my, in my story, stars only start to line up the more I start to connect to that to who I used to be.
Hmm.
Hollywood fucked me up. I went to film school and spent 10 years screenwriting and sitting in coffee shops trying to sell the $1 million screenplay. Because if I sold a screenplay, for me, it wasn't about showing my dad. It was proving to my wife at the time that I
Hmm.
had value. And
Hmm.
also, it was about getting into the quad. I grew up in Hollywood. I grew up in LA. And so
Hmm.
Hollywood represented the quad, the cool
Hmm.
kids, right?
Hmm.
The,
Hmm.
the prom kings. Like if this was a breakfast club, I was like the nerd with the sandwich that mom made me with the crust cut off, right? And so I wanted to get into the quad. So if I could just sell a screenplay, if I could,
Hmm.
and I genuinely had a desire to want to make movies, but if I could
Hmm.
just sell, and so I was so desperate that by chasing after that, I slowly over 10 years completely disconnected to the little kid playing with the Legos and popping
Hmm.
wheelies, and I
Hmm.
started to be someone that I just was very kind of outside in instead of inside out.
Sure.
And that's when nothing happened because I feel like our potency as human beings is very low because you're in your pseudo self, not your solid.
Well,
Once I left Hollywood, once I got a divorce,
mhm.
then things started changing because then I was popping wheelies again.
Yeah, you were in your authenticity.
Well, I started doing crazy weird shit that was honest to me that
Yeah.
perhaps other like meeting people in coffee shops and blogging and all the stuff, right? So
Mhm.
but that's the essence of that is the 10-year-old doing windmills or
Mhm.
obsessed with wheelies, you know?
I could never do the windmill, by the way.
That's because you're white. Baby.
Maybe that's it.
Maybe
Maybe
it's a
that's
genetic
it.
it's a
Maybe
genetic
that's
thing.
it. I
Hey,
don't
hey,
know.
listen, man, all the white boys got all the girls and all the action, so I just like, fuck, I was like, I better be good at something, so I just started dancing.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to kind of end on this topic, the balance
Mhm.
of giving and receiving,
Mhm.
and also how men can be better balancing their desire to be providers, protectors, and emotional partners. So and there's a cadence, there's a dance. It's going to be different for everyone, but the giving and receiving, right? When it comes to relationships, what do you think?
Man, I think so much asks us to step into the masculine frame. That's the term that's being sort of, thrown around out there, your masculine frame. And I think that gets bastardized. And so you have these men out there going to these weekend workshops where some Navy SEAL is for 15 grand is going to teach you how to be a better man.
Mm-hmm.
They should probably stick to storming, compounds, not
Yeah,
relationship to self
yeah.
or relationship to your partner. What they do is great, but I don't think it's particularly good for themselves or relationships at large.
Hmm.
And so, stepping into that masculine frame and being the provider and being the protector and all of that, that's something most of us are fairly naturally geared towards and kind of know how to step into. It's the emotional frame,
Mm,
because your partner typically needs to have that um, container and that space as well. And your ability to touch into your own emotions will allow you to help it to touch into their emotions and make them feel understood, seen, connected to, all of those things. Right. And so, I got that from the women in my life. I didn't get that from my father. And, that was difficult for me.
mm,
Uh, but I like to say that emotional window that we are allowed is a very, very narrow one, right? And so if we go above that top pane, so to speak, of that emotional window, we typically go into rage, we go into anger, and we become the
hmm.
pariah of our
Hmm.
families or our communities. If we go below the bottom pane of that window, then we start we start questioning our masculinity. The ick
Hmm.
factor kicks in. Is that, that's a thing? Um, and so I think that we have to start gaining a palette for our own emotional landscape and an ability to go there. That's the next frontier, I think, for us as men, to be able to tolerate our feelings. And we've pathologized our feelings in this country. We don't want to feel what we need to feel. We desperately
Hmm.
need to feel it. And so
Hmm.
we bury it. And I think this is in part why women live longer than we do, right? Because,
Yeah,
broad stroke speaking, of course, they tend to be more process oriented beings than we are.
sure, sure.
Yeah.
You're saying something really profound when it comes to being a protector. Most men think, okay, I could beat someone up. I have a gun. I can
Mm-hmm.
protect my family. That's what it means to
Mm-hmm.
be a man. But this idea of under the umbrella of being a protector, being able to provide a safe emotional space.
There you go.
That's like, whoa.
Yeah.
And because I don't think many men would define being a protector as someone also who can provide a safe emotional space, you know?
It's exactly right. And that means, you know, that's a whole new landscape, right? Because we typically go in there with the tool belt on.
Mhm.
Women will complain about the fact that, like, don't fix me. I don't
Right.
need you. And, as I learned that early on with Ashley, she's really fucking smart. She
Mhm.
does not need me to fix her.
Right.
And it was like a lesson for me to learn to sit on my hands and to just be
Mm.
present.
Right.
And that's enough. Like, just allowing space and being present for that is the emotional protector. That I can have those feelings, that I can, dive the
Mm.
depths of my darkness, and you're willing to stand there with me and look at it, talk to me about it. Man, that's a whole new version of relationship.
Yeah, and I love that maybe that can be the new definition because, most men, they tie the ability to fix something to their worth or their
Mhm.
manhood.
That's right.
Um, so it's like, what do you mean? That's what I do. I fix things. I fix the
Right.
fucking plumbing. I fix this. What's going on? I'll fix your life.
Mhm.
But if what they want is not fixing, but they want someone
Mhm.
to just be there, that is going to bring up a lot in the man. If his definition is, the definition of a man is to being able to fix.
I thought it was a cruel joke, honestly. I was like,
Mm.
surely this can't be enough. Like, this, I-
Oh, just to
you're
just to be present.
it can't be enough. And
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
I did this little experiment. I thought, I'm going to try this. I'm going to do less. It's an old Paul Newman acting thing. Do less,
Mm,
do less. Well,
mhm,
if I do any less, he told this director, he goes, then I won't be acting. And the director goes, exactly. And so I
right.
tried this, right? So she's in the bedroom. She's having a little bit of a cry. So I don't even know what happened. I'm not even
Mhm,
sure. I just see her in there and she's having a cry. So I come into the bedroom. I don't say a word. I curl up around her, I hug her. I just sit there 5 minutes.
Mm.
Didn't say a word. I get up and I leave. Didn't say a word about it. A few hours later, she said, "Oh, by the way, you were amazing this afternoon."
Wow. And you're like, "What the fuck? What are you talking about?" Yeah. Yes.
So it worked.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't fix anything. I was just there. I was present. I was physically supportive. I was energetically supportive. Learning to do that
Yeah.
is antithetical to everything that we've been taught.
I man, I love that. So I have a moment as well that I would like to share. Something happened and Vanessa was very upset. I think we were fighting, but I mean she was crying. And I don't know what got me to do this, but I kind of went over and I just held her. I
Mm,
held her and she kind
mm,
of nuzzled in my arms kind of like a child and I didn't
mhm,
say one word. I didn't know what to say. I just held her. Um, and to this day, she will note that as one of the most powerful moments. Um,
mhm.
and I didn't say a word. All I did was hold
Yeah,
her.
yeah.
Um, and
We
yeah,
could
and
also
and
safely assume that Vanessa is smart enough to fix herself and
yeah, of
probably
course,
knows what
right,
to do.
right.
Yeah.
But also here's what's interesting is so you and I know this,
Mhm,
but I I've only done this once or twice.
mhm.
I've never, you know what I'm saying? It actually still isn't common, even though I know that that's the prescription. And a
Well,
lot of it is because I'm not used to it. I have not put it in the reps. It's still weird to me to just sit there, say nothing, and hold someone because I feel like I'm doing nothing. What are we doing? You know, let's get to
it's
work.
antithetical. It's antithetical. That's why
Yeah.
you and I go out and you're like, "Hey, I'm having this X, Y, and Z problem." I would turn to you and go, "Well, try B, C, and D," and you'd be like, "Thanks," and we'll move on.
Right.
And
Right.
fixed. Thank you. I hadn't thought of that. That's awesome.
Right. Right.
That's not necessarily how your relationship, typically with your female partner, um, uh, works. It's this. It's often do less. Don't fix me.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Do you think also it works with like if you came to me
Hmm.
with a problem and I held you, do you think
Hmm.
that'd be very different? Do you think that it's only powerful because it's the the masculine, feminine, or the intimate relationship?
I think we all need to be witnessed.
Yeah,
I think we all feel the need to be understood, to be
yeah,
gotten. That it's okay for me to have the feelings that I'm having, and I think that this is part and parcel to the struggle we have as men.
mm,
Is that it's admitting to our shame, admitting to our darkness, admitting to sadness and depression, admitting to feelings of collapse or weaknesses, right? Like we're not allowed to have that. So Brene
yeah,
Brown tells a beautiful story about a woman who came up to her during a book signing and got 4 books signed, one for her and one each for her 3 daughters. And the woman walked away and then began obviously kind of arguing with who was turned out to be her husband. And the man walked over to her and said, you know, do you don't talk about men? She goes, no, I only talk about women. And he goes, well, it's interesting because we men, we have our shame and we have our darknesses. He goes, but I have 4 women in that house that would just as soon watch me fall off that white horse, or
mm,
die on that white horse than to fall off of it. Excuse me, I messed it up. Um, and so I think that, you know, that's kind of where we live. Like we don't necessarily dive into those darknesses. We don't dive the depths of our pain, of our hurt. And so the idea that we could come to another guy, and I
hmm,
think this is why those men's groups can work if they're given enough
yeah,
time.
yeah,
You asked me, do I feel safe with other men? Probably not.
yeah. No, I
Is it?
know. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Is it safe for me to have those feelings? Because I do.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Um, I want to end with some practical not practical, actionable items.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One I thought was about communication. So, what are your just practical communication techniques? I know you've got tons on
Mm-hmm.
initiating difficult conversations. Let me buy you some time. So, I will say one of my go tos, one of my mantras is try to understand before trying to be understood. And this
It's a
comes
good one.
from
It's
half
on
of
my
my
list.
life, always trying to understand
Yep.
or always
Yep.
trying to be understood before
Yep.
even, and also like talking or thinking while they're expressing themselves, I'm already thinking about the comeback. Um,
Yeah.
so
It's a great
if
one.
two people are trying to understand before trying to be understood, then the magnets flip back. It creates soil, safe space, and people are
Mm-hmm.
now listening and being heard. So that'd be one tip for me.
Yeah. Empathy requires no agreement.
Yeah,
Right.
you can
I
disagree.
don't I
Yeah,
don't have to agree with your assessment of
yeah,
And this is where people get caught up. And this is why I have a practice. This is, it's like, you embarrassed me last night in front of our friends. No, I didn't. No, 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 you did, because you said that thing. Well, and it humiliated me. That's not what I said. It's not how I
Right.
said
The
it.
tug of war. Yeah.
Right. Back and forth. What if you
Uh-huh.
stopped and said, oh shit, I am so sorry. I had no idea that
That you
we
were,
can talk
yeah.
about my intentions later. I am
Yeah. Yeah.
so sorry. Anything I said may have hurt you. Right.
Right.
Now we're cooking with gas, but people get caught up spinning their wheels on this nonsense of, no, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, I didn't.
Right, right, right.
And
And let's be fair. I don't know about you, but it's still really hard for me to put the tug of war rope down and to cut straight to whether I did anything wrong or right. What
yep.
I want to focus on is how you feel, and that at that party, you were
Yeah.
embarrassed, or whatever you're going
Yeah.
through. Yeah,
Yeah. That takes an incredible amount of growing up. And what I call practice 5 in my book is called, it's personal responsibility. It's like, I'm going to own that for a moment. I'm going to
yeah.
put it aside, my good intentions, or this feels like a character assassination. Like, I would never do that. I would never do that to you. Sure. That's probably true. It's not at all helpful right now,
Hmm.
because we have to triage the moment. I'm not admitting to anything other than I see that you're in pain. And if we start there, then we have fertile ground to stand upon. And so people will come to you all the time, and they want to talk about I statements for communication techniques. No, they want to talk about nonviolent communication. Does not work. Why? Because the first step in I statements and nonviolent communication is having empathy.
Mm,
And if you're in a part of yourself that is designed to win, to fight, to create distance, that part of you does not have the gear of empathy.
right,
And
right.
so the technique that I use with everyone is, and myself too, is, who shows up to this conversation? What part of me shows up here?
Mm,
Because if I show up in my protector parts, if I show up in my inner critic, I'm not going to be able to find that gear and say,
hmm.
hold on a second, hold on a second. First of all, I'm really sorry that anything that came out of my mouth hurt your feelings that way.
Yeah,
Let's talk about what that was.
yeah.
If you do that one time with your partner, they're going to look at you like a dog with sort of funny noise. They're not going to,
Right,
you know,
right.
Ashley will say to me, I know what you're doing, and I'll go, yeah, you're probably glad I'm doing it. Fucking grows up,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And then we could talk about like what actually happened. It's funny because then more of the story tends to come out,
Mm,
and you find yourself connecting in ways you didn't think you could if you triage that moment and know that empathy requires no agreement. If we stop trying to win the argument, what have you won if she loses? I mean, if Vanessa loses an argument with you,
hmm.
how's she feeling after that? She feeling warm and fuzzy and cuddly?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you win, great. And we're Americans, we win shit, right? Okay. But you win, if where there is a victor, there must be the vanquished. And you've just vanquished the person you're supposed to love. If you love someone, why would you want them to lose anything?
Mm.
So this is a zero-sum game. And trying to win, that doesn't work. And empathy requires no agreement.
I love it. Bumper sticker.
There it
Empathy
is.
requires no agreement. I want to
Mm-hmm.
end on that note. Next week is episode 2. We're going to talk about men and fatherhood, embracing the life cycle event, theme being transitioning into fatherhood and what it
Ooh,
means for men's identity and relationships. If you like this episode 1, tell a friend. Where you can find Lair, all his services, social media will be in the show notes. And Lair, thank you for doing this with me. Not only am I having a good time, but I feel like this is going to help a lot of people.
I hope
Just
so.
this conversation. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Really enjoy talking to you.
All right. Be well.